here's one of the greatest of all time. I'm going to read it to you for a second. Francisco Tarrega. Ever seen him anywhere before? This guy? Francisco de Assis Tarrega y Exia was born November 21st, 1852, and his life ended in December 1909. He was a Spanish composer and classical guitarist of the Romantic period. He is known for such pieces as Recuerdos de la Alhambra, and he is often called the father of classical guitar and is considered one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Okay? We'll be on him in a minute. So, onward. Hey, let me tell you about Francisco Tarrega before his picture comes on. He composed 78 original scores, I think I read. Let's see. Yeah, he composed 78 original scores and 120 transcriptions, mostly for his own use. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with his compositions. By the way, like I was saying earlier, anytime you see 18th century, 19th century guy, and he's kind of interesting to you, look him up. You might find something that you can use for your own guitar playing, more than just an air guitar. Tarrega was born 21st November 1852 in Villarreal, province of Castellón, Spain. It is said that Francisco's father played flamenco and several other musical styles on his guitar. When his father was away working as a watchman at the convent at San Pascual, Francisco would take his father's guitar and attempt to make the beautiful sounds he had heard. Francisco's nickname as a child was Kike. As a child, he ran away from his nanny and fell into an irrigation channel and injured his eyes. Okay? Fearing that his son might lose his sight completely, his father moved his family to Castellón de la Plana to attend music classes because as a musician, he would be able to earn a living, even if blind. Both his first music teachers, Eugenie Raiz and Manuel Gonzalez, were blind. Listen to this. In 1862, concert guitarist Julian Arcas, on tour in Castellón, heard the young Tarrega play and advised Tarrega's father to allow Francisco to come to Barcelona to study with him. Tarrega's father agreed, but insisted that his son take piano lessons as well. The guitar was viewed as an instrument to accompany singers, while the piano was quite popular throughout Europe. However, Tarrega had to stop his lessons shortly after when Arcas left for a concert tour abroad. Although Tarrega was only 10 years old, he ran away and tried to start a musical career on his own by playing in coffee houses and restaurants. In Barcelona, he was soon found and brought back to his father, who had to make great sacrifices to advance his son's musical education. 3 years later, in 1865, he ran away again, this time to Valencia, where he joined a family of gypsies. His father looked for him and brought him back home once more, but he ran away a third time, again to Valencia. He was getting good at making escapes, wasn't he? Well. By his early teens, Tarrega was proficient in both the piano and the guitar, and also making an escape. For a time, he played with other musicians at local engagements to earn money, but eventually he returned home to help his family. Tarrega entered the Madrid, Spain, Royal Academy Conservatory in 1874 under the sponsorship of a wealthy merchant named Antonio Canisa. He had brought along with him a recently purchased guitar made in Seville by Antonio de Torres, the guy we talked about earlier, father of the modern Spanish guitar. Its splendor, sonic qualities, its superior sonic qualities inspired him both in his playing and in his view of the instrument's compositional potential. He couldn't be beat. At the conservatory, Tarrega studied competition under Emilio Arrieta, who convinced him to focus on guitar and abandon the idea of a career with the piano. Hey, by the end of the 1870s, Tarrega was teaching the guitar to Emilio Pujol, Miguel Loble, and of course the aforementioned Daniel Fortea, and giving regular concerts. So he was probably, he was probably pulling in a little of this here, a little of this there, and it came to be a lot because I think his wife was a music teacher or something. So Tarrega received much acclaim for his playing and began traveling to other areas of Spain to perform. By this time, he was composing his first works for guitar, which he played in addition to works of other composers. During the winter of 1880, Tarrega replaced his friends, and one in particular, Luis de Soria, in a concert in Novelda, Alicante, where, after the concert, an important man in town asked the artist to listen to his daughter, Maria Jose Rizzo, who was learning to play guitar. Soon, they were engaged. That's the romantic area. Yeah, that's the area too, huh? In 1881, Tarrega played in the Opera Theater in Lyon and then the Paris Odeon in the bicentenary of the death of Pedro Calderón de la Barca. He also played in London, but he liked neither the language nor the weather. There is a story about his visit to England. So listen to this story. After a concert, some people saw that the musician was in low spirits. "What is the matter, maestro?" they asked him. "Do you miss home? Your family, perhaps?" They advised him to capture that moment of sadness in his music. Thus, he conceived the theme of one of his most memorable works, Lagrima, literally meaning teardrop. After playing in London, he returned to Novelda for his wedding. At Christmas 1882, Tarrega married Maria Jose Rizzo. To enlarge his guitar repertoire, and no doubt to make use of his considerable knowledge of keyboard music, he soon began transcribing piano works in Beethoven, in Chopin, in Mendelssohn, and others. Tarrega and his wife moved to Madrid, gaining their living by teaching privately and playing concerts. But after the death of an infant daughter during the winter, Maria Josefa de los Angeles Tarrega Rizzo, they settled permanently in Barcelona in 1885. Among his friends in Barcelona were Isaac Albanese, Enrique Granados, Joaquin Turina, and Pau Casals. Hey, you know, that sounds like he plays basketball, huh? Well, Francisco Tarrega and Maria Jose had 3 more children. I guess they couldn't help it after they lost one. But soon later, from the later 1800s up to 1903, Tarrega continued composing, but limited his concerts to Spain. In 1900, Tarrega visited Algiers where he heard a repetitive rhythm played on an Arabian drum. The following morning, he composed Danza Mora based on that rhythm. In about 1902, he cut his fingernails and created a sound that would become typical of those guitarists associated with his school. The following year, he went on tour to Italy, giving highly successful concerts in Rome, Naples, and Milan. But he shaved his fingernails to get a sound out of it. You know, you pinch it a little, you kind of poke it a little with your fingernail, and it makes a louder sound. Today they have strings that sound off louder. I can't tell you the brand name. In January 1906, he was afflicted with paralysis on his right side. And though he would eventually return to the concert stage, he never completely recovered. He finished his last work, Oramus, on the 2nd of December, 1909. He died in Barcelona 13 days later, on the 15th of November, at the age of 57. So that's Francisco Tarrega. He has, like I said, he was one of the greatest guitarists of all time back then in the 1800s. So let's talk about Daniel Fortea, who was a pupil. Now I'm going to tell you, like I said earlier, if some of these guys are interesting, or they were a pupil of somebody like Tarrega or Gandhi or something, go ahead and look him up in Google or look him up in a dictionary, encyclopedia or something, because Daniel Fortea was like Jules Gandhi. He played PIMA, and he wrote a lot of things, and they read music a lot in those days, instead of just anybody can play guitar. What does that mean? I can do anything I want? No, these guys were Queensberry rules of guitar. So they PIMA, and they were reading the music and knowing a lot of scales and writing all about it, making their own music out of them. So, like I was saying, anybody can play guitar. You do it. You better off, if you want to learn to tie your shoes better than anybody, you practice doing it. So anybody can play guitar. Just keep working at it. And stick around. I got a couple of more people we're going to talk about. You won't regret hearing about this. Anybody can play guitar. Now we're going to move along into another guitar player. You know, he's a legend in the southern area of the United States, Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana. And so I'm going to show you a picture of this guy. This is how he looked earlier in life. See what he's doing? Reminds you of somebody, doesn't it? Okay, here's another picture of him later in his life. New Orleans legend, Snooks Eaglin. You ever heard of him? There's a lot of guitar players you haven't really heard of. They're legends and icons. Snooks Eaglin. His first name was Ferd, F-I-R-D. Ferd Eaglin Jr., known as Snooks Eaglin, was an American guitarist and singer based in New Orleans. In his early years, he was sometimes credited under other names like Blind Snook Eaglin, or Blind Snooks, or Little Snook, Ford Eaglin, Blind Guitar Ferd. So it was Blind Guitar Ferd. His vocal style was reminiscent of that of Ray Charles in the 1950s. When he was in his late teens, he sometimes billed himself as Little Ray Charles. He played a wide range of styles of music within the same content, album, or even song. Blues, rock and roll, jazz, country, and Latin. In his early years, he also played acoustic blues. Hey. His ability to play a wide range of songs and make them his own earned him the nickname, the Human Jukebox. Eaglin claimed in interviews that his musical repertoire included more than 2,500 songs. At live shows, he usually did not prepare set lists and was unpredictable, even to his bandmates. He played songs that came to him on stage and also took requests from the audience. In his childhood, Eaglin lost his sight not long after his birthday, his first birthday, having been stricken with glaucoma and spent several years in the hospital with other ailments. Around the age of 5, he received a guitar from his father and taught himself to play by listening to and playing along with the radio. A mischievous youngster, he was given the name Snooks after a radio character named Baby Snooks. That was probably in the southern part of America, but in his early years, he had to teach himself how to play, just like quite a few others, so we'll get to that later. In his early years, like 1947, at the age of 11, Eaglin entered a talent contest organized by the radio station WNOE and won it with his performance of 12th Street Rag. 3 years later, he dropped out of a school for the blind to become a professional musician, just like all those other guys that ran away, escaped, and wanted to start off early. In 1952, he joined the Flamingos, a local 7-piece band started by Alan Toussaint. The Flamingos did not have a bass player, and according to Eaglin, he played both the guitar and the bass parts simultaneously on his guitar. He stayed with the Flamingos for several years until the group disbanded in the mid-50s. As a solo artist, his recording and touring were inconsistent, and for a man with a career of about 50 years, his discography is rather slim. His first recording was in 1953, playing guitar at a recording session for James Sugar Boy Crawford. Alright? The first recording under his own name were made by Harry Oster, a folklorist from Louisiana State University who found Eaglin playing in the streets of New Orleans and recorded him in 7 sessions between 1958 and 1960. For these recordings, Eaglin played in a folk blues style, accompanying himself on an acoustic guitar without a band. These recordings were later released by several labels, including Folkways, Folk Lyric, and Prestige Bluesville. In the 1960s and 70s, from 1960 to 1963, Eaglin recorded for Imperial. He played electric guitar in sessions for Imperial with backup from a band including James Booker on piano and Smokey Johnson on drums. He recorded 26 tracks for Imperial, many of which were songs written by Dave Bartholomew. Unlike the Harry Oster recordings, these works on Imperial were New Orleans R&B in the style for which he is widely known today. After Imperial, in 1964, he recorded alone at his home with a guitar for the Swedish Broadcasting Corporation. These recordings were released on the album Blues Kvarter in 1964. For the remainder of the 1960s, he apparently made no recordings. His next recorded work was for the Jewish label Sonnet in 1971. In another album, Down Yonder, with Ellis Marsalis on piano, sound familiar? Was released in 1978. Apart from his own work, Eaglin took part in recording sessions with Professor Longhair in 1971 and 1972, released on the album Mardi Gras in Baton Rouge. He also played guitar on the first album by the Wild Magnolias, recorded in 1973. Okay? So here we go with Blacktop. Eaglin joined Nauman and Hammond Scott of Blacktop Records in the 1980s and obtained a recording contract with the label. Eaglin's years with Blacktop were the most consistent years of his recording career. Between 1987 and 1999, He recorded 4 studio albums and a live album and appeared as a guest on a number of recordings by other blacktop artists, including Henry Butler, Earl King, and Tommy Ridgely. After Blacktop Records closed, Eaglin released the album The Way It Is for Money Pit Records. Hey, I need to be into that one. Produced by the Scott brothers of Blacktop. In 1997, Eaglin's version of St. James Infirmary was featured in a UK television advertisement for Budweiser Lager. Okay, now here's the sad parts of the story. Eaglin died of a heart attack at Ochsner Medical Center in New Orleans on February 18, 2009. He had been diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2008 and had been hospitalized for treatment. He was scheduled to make a comeback appearance for the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival in the spring of 2009. In honor of his contribution to New Orleans music, he was depicted in an artist's rendering on the covering of Jazz Fest Bible for the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival in 2009. For many years, Eaglin lived in St. Rose, a suburb of New Orleans, with his wife. Though he did not play many live shows, he regularly performed at Rock and Bowl in New Orleans and at the New Orleans at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Well, that's a long way from Louisiana, isn't it? We got one little more sweet little jewel of knowledge here. Okay, no, Snooks Eaglin did a lot of stuff, more than people realize. Eaglin, known for his picking strings with his thumbnail, played and recording with the hosts of New Orleans Giants, including Professor Longhair that we mentioned, the Wild Magnolias, and pianist Allen Toussaint. Musicians like Eric Clapton, Paul McCartney, Robert Plant, and Bonnie Raitt would seek Eaglin out to watch him perform. Okay? Eaglin was slated to perform this year at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, where he was a popular yearly draw. Quint Davis, the event's producer, said the musician's death leaves a hole that cannot be filled, not only in the festival, but also in the city's music community. His death is like losing a Dizzy Gillespie, a Professor Longhair, a Johnny Adams, or a Gatemouth Brown, Davis says. He's one of those unique giants of New Orleans music. So remember, Snooks Eaglin, look here, that picture's up, just look at it. He came a long way, taught himself, played behind his back. He did a lot of stuff. He played with his fingernails down. You see his hands going. Look him up in Google and YouTube. His fingers are just, man, wow. He could play like Zonny DiFerranti or Julian Bream or somebody. You know what I mean? He looks like that. Johnny B. Good, he played a lot of stuff. So that's the greatness of Snooks Eaglin, and he's known for playing blues mostly. So anybody can play guitar. You can put your time into it and play just like Snooks Eaglin if you want to. Anybody can play guitar. Hey! Anybody can play guitar. And this next subject is beyond this next subject is beyond proving that anybody can play guitar. For one, he grew up like our previous subject, Snooks Eaglin, learned how to play guitar on the radio and, you know, sitting around playing brooms and playing behind his back and everything. So getting out of the Army at 21 and showing out with everybody he played with, Little Richard and whoever, liking Tina, James Brown, B.B. King. And you know, this guy had a name. And Can you figure out what his name is right now? I saved this guy for last. So you know who I'm talking about. So anybody can play guitar. There he is. So that is Jimi Hendrix, isn't it? Now don't forget, you could take that route, but what I show you is as close as it gets to learn how to play guitar by yourself. So anybody can play guitar. And don't forget, learn to play blues faster on Anybody Can Play Guitar. Learn things that your musician friends probably don't even know themselves. Learn that on Anybody Can Play Guitar. And this one last peek at Jimi Hendrix. Don't forget, anybody can play guitar. Yeah, anybody can play guitar.
Guitar. Anybody can play guitar. Just look at me. Don't believe what I say. Just watch me sing.